Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sat Kartar. Assalamu alaikum. A very good evening, India. Buon pomeriggio, Italia. There is a welcome you, of course, to the 12th YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. And there is a little, I'm worried actually because Dave Frank from New York, we were talking since last night, but he's not been able to connect with me today. So I'm sort of worried. So I'm normally the ritual is that we meet 30 minutes before time, and I set the cameras, create the scenes, and he's in New York, and I've known him for 5 years, and I'm worried. It's without reason. There would be no miscommunication or lack of communication thereof today. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Baldeep.
It's lovely to see you.
Great to see you. We're coming to you live from captivity in New York.
Yes, and I'm held captive now. It's my 50th day in captivity here.
Wow.
How is Hari? Everybody fine? Are you both fine?
Yes, we're fine. How is your family?
We are 4 people in 4 cities. Luigi is in Bologna, Leonard Amartyan is in Turin, Maurizio is back in Delhi, and I'm here at the Institute of South Asian Studies, hosted by Dr. Tiziana Lorenzetti and her husband, Dr. Valerio Del Monte. So we are all split. I'm jealous, of course, that you guys are together and I'm alone. So here we are. Welcome to the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. It's the 12th Mēlā or meeting or the conversation. And it is really wonderful. We go way back to the 90s,
yes.
Isn't it?
We'll go all the way back to Fenway Park.
Yes. You were teaching at Berklee at the time.
Yes, I was an associate professor of piano at Berklee for 17 years. And that's when we met each other first when I was in Boston.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So there's been some miscommunication, of course, but of course people have been very kind and patient. They've waited, and of course I got a chance to. I wish I had, I was planning to premiere it, but Mother Nature, Mommy Nature has her own ways. So I ended up showing the Vaisakhi, concert that I did, virtual Vaisakhi with the Indian Embassy here on the 13th. So it was an hour and an 8-minute long clip. So I just shared that with everybody. So let's go. We're in New York now. The whole world is now tuned into New York. So let's have some jazz. What are you going to play for us first?
I'm coming to you from 52nd Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. That was fantastic. It began with the left hand, the bass and the rhythm that you kept, and then what a movement.
Yeah. So
tell us about what did you play? What was unique about? What was it? What was it about?
Okay, so when you're playing jazz piano, there's a lot of different styles, and the style I was just playing was a walking bass line style. And the way it works is that I'm improvising over the chord changes to a song. So the foundation of the improvisation is a series of chords that repeats like a carousel. So you have each chorus is a chord, and that is not improvised. That is set. So I know when I choose before I'm going to play, I'm going to improvise on this series of chords. A lot of times it's from kind of American standard tunes. That has become the American standard tune from the 1900s have become the basic, for the most part, the basic foundation on which jazz is improvised. So you take the chord sequence of a tune, you don't change that, but in this case, I just scrapped the melody and just started off with the bass line. So the bass line on the piano is simulating a walking bass, like a bass player in jazz. So you always see, when you hear a jazz group, somebody doing this walking bass thing. That establishes the basic pulse of the music. So in this particular style of playing, I set the bass line up first. It's all quarter notes generally. Most of the time, not always, on the first beat where the chords change, you put the root of the chord. It doesn't have to always be that way, but that's kind of very basic. So I'm creating a melody. I'm hearing the chords in my head of this progression, and that I've done about 1 million times, at least. That's just in the last month. So I know what to expect with that. So on top of that, I'm creating a melody that intersects the chords. So if I was to play this with the chords and show you what that sounded like. So I'm hearing this chords in my mind, and I'm improvising a melody to go on top of that, all in quarter notes. That's a bass line.
Wow.
This is not, the chords are not improvised. I mean, I'm choosing voicings on the spot, but the chord sequence is not improvised. As time goes on, you can even improvise with that a little bit. The bass line just keeps going. It's like the ticking of a clock in jazz. Now, I'm going to have that chord sequence still going on in my head, and I'm going to create a melody line in the right hand while the bass line is also being created. So you're actually creating two different melodic lines at the same time, and the common denominator is the chord progression. That's what's not improvised. So we'll usually like to start out with a kind of a simple melody in the right hand, so you have room to expand. So every jazz performance, and every performance I'm sure in your musical field too, has an arc of intensity. So you generally wouldn't start with the most intense thing right off the top, although sometimes you could. But usually we'll start kind of simple. So I'll create a simple melody in the right hand against the walking bass line.
Wow, wow.
Start out really simple so you have room to get more complicated. Sometimes we can do what we call a third hand. A third hand is when you play the melody on the top part of the hand, like with the third and fourth fingers, and then in the inside of the hand we can play a little chord fragment, so it sounds three-dimensional. And you try to bring the melody out and try to bring the inner chord down in volume. The whole time the chords are going around like a carousel. The sequence is the same. And this is how you play in a group too. So if you're playing in a group, that carousel of chords is going on for everybody in the group. And we're all improvising melodies on top of that sequence. So from the simple melodies,
Wow.
I'm about to finish one time around the chord sequence. Now the next time around, maybe I'll make it more complicated in the right hand. The basic feel of jazz in the right hand for soloing is what we call the swing eighth flow, which sounds like this. So this swing eighth note flow is the backbone of jazz improvisation. Sometimes we can go like this. New York, 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 New York. So now I'm going to focus on this. The left hand is improvising a quarter note bass line over the chord sequence. The right hand is improvising a melody in swing eighth. So you have a quarter in the right hand and a swing eighth in the left.
Wow.
Now maybe I'll put some chords in the right hand here. So generally we want to get more intense as we go, generally. There may be some times where you bring the intensity down, but in general we want to create an arc of intensity through the performance, right? So I'll maybe put some chords in the right hand here, which will be more intense. Now here, what we'll do is we'll change the key and go up a whole slow step, create a little variety. It's hard to do when you're talking.
Right. Fantastic.
But not impossible. Same thing, now we're improvising in the key of D minor. Before it was C minor, so it gives a bit of a lift. Wow. Now we can put a bit of blues in. Now we'll go back to C minor. You're changing elements. A lot of what jazz piano is when you're doing a performance is changing the elements. So you have single notes, and then we can put some chords in to change the texture. We can change the range. Now I'll build up the speed of the right-hand line from eighth notes to triplets. Triplets is Tennessee. Tennessee, 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 like this. And now maybe a simple melody. So the arc kind of completes itself, so you start simple and end simple. The airplane is coming down. Now it's going to come to an end.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
This is one style of playing.
How many styles are there?
How many styles? Well, boy, I don't know if I have to give a number. There's infinite things you can do.
Yes,
would you like me to demonstrate a few other styles?
Yes, it would be fantastic. Yeah, it'd be very, very educative for everybody. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm trying to give a little bit of explain a little bit about how jazz piano works.
The key for Dave, is that most people listen to jazz also because it has been shaped for some time, but without understanding it. So our conversation would make them informed listeners. They will become knowledgeable, they will become connoisseurs. So that's the intent. It's like a master class. We have one of the greatest teachers on the planet to do with jazz piano. So we might as well take the benefit of learning about what jazz is and how do we, where do we get the eyes from, the ears and the eyes, to understand and the understanding. So that will be very helpful.
Great. A lot of times people find jazz, they can't, as you said, they can't understand it because there's so many notes, they're going so fast, and the emphasis is not on a memorable melody. The emphasis on creating these improvised lines, and no one, including the player, has ever heard them before. So a lot of times in a jazz performance, we'll start out by playing a song and playing a melody. What I've done so far is just pure improvisation based on a chord sequence. But you could also improvise on a song, and this is easier for most people to grasp. So if you would do that, you would do a different style. Let's see. We'll play like a standard tune called All the Things You Are. So now I'm going to play the melody. This is the bare bones of what we're improvising on later. And this will have a different style where we'll have the chords in the left hand and the melody first in the right hand. people know the words to this. So here I'm playing voicings, jazz voicings in the left hand, and I'm playing the original melody written by the composer, Jerome Kern. So this is where the improvisation starts. You are the angel glow that lights a star, the very things you know are what you are. Someday my happy arms will hold you, and someday you'll know that moment divine when all the things you are mine. That's the song. So in the left hand you have voicings, and that's a study in itself. So when you're studying jazz piano, you'll study many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different possible voicings. For example, the melody of that song sounds like this. The melody doesn't change. But the left-hand voicing can be very different. It could sound like this. Or it could sound like this. That's something that the jazz pianist improvises on in the moment. So again, behind everything that's happening, there's a sequence. And the sequence is the chord progression. You are the birds have to sing round and round and round. And then what you do as an improviser is the first thing you can do if you want in terms of understanding improvisation is I can what we call embellish the melody. And I just know that's a big part of what in your musical style, right? Mm-hmm. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a basic raga or something, and you embellish before you go.
Yes. There is my cousin who's a violinist, Kamal Veer Singh from UK. He's also observed right now. He's commented on the live feed. He says jazz is, I'm quoting him, jazz is more freestyle improv. While in Indian music, he is a very learned Indian classical musician and also plays, has played, in groups or ensembles with the jazz as well. Sure. So he's versed with both the worlds. He says, while in Indian music, we have to stick to the rules of a raga, hence improvisation within the same notes. So just somehow related. So let's say if we choose a raga, what he's trying to say is that pentatonic. So anything I do would be here. And seldom do we change the key within that. There was a tradition, ancient tradition, which would do it, but not within the system, within one rendition as such. So I think he's pointing towards that. And Dr. Francesca Casio, who's the professor of music at the Hofstra University, she's also made one observation that that it's fantastic what she's hearing, but she's asking, what about the original spontaneity of jazz? Her observation is that originally jazz was not very cerebral, like it has evolved, like Indian music also. Originally, jazz was not perhaps cerebral, not too much, not too many things, like like a very complex a weave, an intelligent weave. It used to be more innocent or more early days. How it used to be, like Indian music too, it evolved, became more and more complex with time. So has jazz also, so my question would be, has jazz also evolved? Was it less complex before? Has it evolved over the decades, is what she's pointing towards?
Yeah. Well, jazz definitely has evolved, and there are very clear historical periods of different types of jazz. I think more she's reacting to the particular style of jazz piano that I'm playing in the moment, where you didn't hear any recognizable melodies, and it was about creating.
No, because we are talking, you're explaining. Yeah, right now you're not performing. You're explaining.
Yeah, but I can.
It's good that you say that. It's good that you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. Watch now in jazz, we have something similar to what you were talking about, but it is more free form. So, for example, on this song I was just playing. Now, look, if I played, I would be curious to the person who commented. Maybe I'll just play a little bit of something that has more of a song form in it.
Right. Of course,
you know what
we
I mean?
want to come to that anyway. Yes. Okay, we can go there now.
Let's try this and see.
And we'll come back to the pedagogy part later. And we'll come back to the pedagogy after.
Now, one thing you can do is embellish the melody as a form of improvisation, which would make it a little less free form. Now, at this point, you'd get more complex and leave the melody completely. So, but I think a lot of times jazz pianists will play the melody with very big chords to start, which will prepare people for that free form improvisation. So,
I see.
You play it that way and then go into improvisation from there.
Right.
So that might give some people more of a context.
Right.
And in that sense, it's less free form. But I do want to answer one thing which is very interesting, and about the use of scales and so on. So when you play jazz, we do have scales that are assigned to different parts of the song. We don't do, like, we wouldn't do a whole song with one scale or one mode. You might do 4 measures of the song with one mode, and then 4 measures of the song with another mode, and so on. So we switch modes very freely, and also you're not confined to the notes of the mode. So you can add other notes too. But there are when you study jazz, the first thing a student will do is take a song and analyze the chords to see what the progressions are and see how the movement of the chords are. And then from that, we will get scales that will work very well over those chords. And so when you begin improvisation, you generally will stay very close to the notes of a scale, but it will change every few measures. That's the difference.
I see. And in any case, to do with the cerebral part, or the intelligence or the complexity, even in the raga system, when you want to break monotony, when it evolves from one melody line to multiple melody lines within a composition, then it's already the intelligence comes in, grammar comes in, rules get
Absolutely.
established. So it is, and I know that she's not talking also, nor will I ever go there in that sense, because in the end, in the Indian system also, with the one ragic, like for example, progression. Do you do progressions as well? Like, let's say there are 3 notes. How many progressions can be made? How many what variety can be made? Do you guys work on that? Like 7 notes, like, the scales when you do.
You mean like for this?
Yeah. For example, so for example, there are 6 possibilities. Or 4 notes, for example, with 24. There's 24, for example. I have a problem with my earphones. But just to give an example, this is cerebral, like this is brain. So we don't use it in the rag system, but we do it in the practice. When we practice, we prepare our aspect, then certain aspects that get used, the raga system, because certain notes may not exist. For example, like I sang pentatonic malcounts, it is only 5 notes at so it is, I think it's all part of it, but it's wonderful to see the arrangement, the pedagogy, the methodology, the architecture that you shared when you began. It's fantastic how with the left hand you're keeping certain chords, then you're changing chords, and you're imagining already like the melody where you're going to go. You already, like our elders would say, the note already appears before you render it.
Our elders would say. And no one knows how it happens.
Exactly. And when you mentioned about it's all comes freshly baked. The elders I studied with, they would say, learn the raga, but don't be a parrot. Every day you sing the same raga, it will be a different rendition.
Right. Now there is a form of jazz.
That's why I think we have something very close in that sense with jazz and the Indian raga system.
There is a form of jazz called modal jazz. What I played for you so far is what we could call improvising on standards or chord changes. And there you have, it's about the harmony. But there are other forms of jazz which are very close to what you're talking about, where it's about improvising on modes and not changes. And Miles Davis and Bill Evans were the first guys to really explore this. And my teacher, Lenny Tristano, also explored this. So in this kind of jazz, you may have a pattern in the left hand, let's say. Now this pattern, without maybe there are, I don't know, a bunch of different modes that you could play over this pattern in the right hand. So like it could be like this.
Wow.
Right? Or it could be a different mode. Or it could be like a blues mode. Maybe there would be 5 or 6 modes that would fit this pattern. And in this style of playing, you can actually just do one mode for a pretty good period of time. And then you can switch to another one. So this is called modal jazz. And it's very hypnotic. And I think we have the closest parallel in what you and I do, I think, maybe in this kind of style.
Yes, yeah.
Like you can... This is all the notes of one scale in the right. This is the Mixolydian. every different mode has a different mood to it. So the Mixolydian scale is kind of a nice feel, nice pleasant. Now we can improvise as long as we want. I've seen Keith Jarrett sometimes go on for 20 minutes just improvising on this kind of thing. But we could also use a different mode that would have a different feel. So this would be like the Phrygian mode.
Wow.
The same left hand pattern. And you can switch, so you can spend some time in the kind of a bright mode. Now I can switch and keep the same pattern. And you can do that forever if you want. Then go back. You can get, my teacher Lenny Tristano was kind of did this thing where he had two different patterns going, and they were in different time signatures. Let's see if I can do it. Kind of like a hypnotic thing.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to mention here, because it can be a little misleading also to the propositions that I've shared. One, that the idea of the cerebral, it is not just in what how you began with, because Indian classical music is among the most complex ever evolved musical forms. Our percussion, for example, has no parallel.
Right.
And I had the oldest school of percussion that exists, that still survives in South Asia. Compositions that go way back in time are just mind-boggling. The kind of dexterity, the complexity,
Yes.
the dynamic range. They can from 32 times the pace to negative 32 an instant, and then we call that. So here I'm gonna to remove the misconception of several of our listeners today, that Indian raga system is not just about modal music, because our grand elders of Indian classical music, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, over 1,000 years ago, they had three basic forms of raga system. One is what would correspond to what you described as modal. Let's say if we have taken a scale, re ga ma pa da ni pa da ga re ga ma pa ma ga re sa 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 da pa ma ga re ga ma pa da re sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. This one scale, like what would be a major scale, for example, was Rag Bilawal. Now, Bilawal's scale would be sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, but I'm not singing the scale. I'm singing the raga, which has its own crooked patterns. Sa re, so re ga ma ge.
The nuances
exactly.
you're getting are
but it's form.
Our imagination.
Yes, one is the nuance. One is also the crooked pattern. So nuances are how you render the crooked pattern, but the skeletal structure is different. It is not going sa re, guys go sa ge re ga ma ga pa ni de ni za de pa, so sa de pa ma ge re ga ma re sa. So for example, but now this is what we call, or the grand elders call, Shuddha Roop Ragas, the pure form, pure modal, let's say for a moment, pure melody. Then they had, the second form was Chayalag. Chayalag were blend of two ragas. Now they could be light years apart from each other. They were Chayalag forms. So when you're changing the chord, I empathize with already. I'm not alien to what you're doing. For example, let's say raga, let's say Gaudi Purbi. Gaudi would be signature of the Gaudi. Ma ma re sa ma ga re sa ni sa re pa da ma ga re sa ni sa re ma ba ni sa ni da ba re ma ga re sa. This is pure Gaudi. Now Purbi is ani sa ga ma ba da da ba ma ga ma ga re sa. Now blending these two, Gaudi and Purbi, is one of the ancient ragas. So the pa ma ga re sa. So experiments like blending of two ragas, or then there is a third form is Sankiran. Now there is where I think jazz, some people say jazz has taken a lot from Indian classical music, where the Sankiran Roop ragas are 3 or more. Now there is no end to it. Though we've got rag malas, which have, like Guru Granth Sahib has a rag mala at the end, it has 84 ragas in one composition. Now you can have a free, I mean, it's an amazing kind of a thing. And rag malas or guldastas, like Guru Gobind Singh has composed Bajat Vasant. One of my last mentor would sing it. Bajat Vasant aur bhai Ram Hindol Rag Bajat Lalata Bajat Lalata Ke sang adhana sari. It's changing with the name of the raga. It is changing. So any Indian classical musician thinking that Indian raga system is very rigid to one raga, they need to look at the Indian classical music's history and what all has been achieved by the grand elders. The Guru Nanak sang the only Sankiran, blend of 3 ragas in Guru Granth. Is Gaudi, Purbi, Deepki. 3 different ragas blended together. So I don't think, I mean, I'm sorry for this longish share with you, but I think it is important for listeners to understand that music, you remember when your guitarist friend said, oh, you're singing, when I sang Ramkali when your colleagues from Berklee, when you guys came to hear me, I'd sung that Guru Arjan Dev's composition, Jab Gobind Gopal Lal Ram Naam Simar Tu Jeeva. So when he said, oh wow, are you using microtones? Your colleague guitarist got, yeah. And I said, well, a microtone is a microtone until it gets established as a note that belongs to a raga. And he so beautifully exclaimed that, oh, for us, between a note and the other, there's a big hole. And I had responded, for us, there's a cosmos within. Right. So the idea of, then he asked, so what do you think about fusion? I remember mentioning him, saying it to you, shared it at that time that I don't think it's possible. There's no fusion. And he had retorted, oh, you're an old timer. I don't know if you would recall, he said, oh, you're an old timer. I said, no, but you need to hear me out. I said, my elders, the way my teachers have taken me to a zone, there is no 2 different kinds of music. There's only one music. To create fusion, I need to find 2 different ideas of music. There's only one music for me. When I see jazz, and he said, oh wow, we never saw like that. So for me, when I hear you play, I don't see anything alien in it. For me, I see at times a blend of one raga to another. And if you're changing gram, they used to do that to Baba Sharda Singh was adept. I mean, I can go on telling stories, but today is not my storytelling day. I'm just sort of sharing anecdotes so that we are able to sort of clear several misconceptions, which are long-standing misconceptions about the East and the West, as if there are 2 somehow, these imaginary lines. What is East and what is West? the sun rises
Well,
from
I
the
think it's
east, but
important.
there is no particular point in east, as we say.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have been told here in the West that when you play a raga, you stay with one scale.
Yeah.
So I think our exposure to the kind of music and tradition that you're a master of is practically nil.
Yes.
We've heard some wonderful, Indian classical music, but just like if I played, like a simple jazz, and I would say that would be jazz. That's just a very kind of surface level.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about was news to me. I did not know that you can change ragas, change scales in ragas.
Yeah.
So, that's part of what I think this conversation could be so interesting.
Yes.
Is because it's possible and probable that we have all kinds of misconceptions about what the music is. Yeah.
Exactly. And if I may also share on this note, Dave, that there are multiple methodologies that we had. At least three that I can for the sake of brevity. One is a composition, for example, I was rendering early morning in my video log to do with coronavirus. Look at this one. It's Dev Gandhari of the Bhairo Mel. Now, Bhairo is flat second, right? Whatever the scale you take. The flat second is a must, right? And the flat sixth and everything, the flat fourth. And the third and the fifth is anyway achal, as we say, it doesn't change, the fifth and the first. And the seventh are sharp. So Bhairo would be Gama Ba Mada Ma Ba Gare Gama Gare Sa Dantra. The stanza goes Mada Ni Sa Re Sa Ni Da Ba Da Ma Ba Gama Re Sa. Now this is it. Now Dev Gandhari on the other hand is totally different. Dev Gandhari pure would be or you can give me a chord so that give me D. Da, okay, da, sa, so this would be my note. Re ni sa re ga ma ga re sa re ni sa re ga ma pa da ni da ba ma pa da sa ni da ba ma ga re ma. So this is, for example, Dev Gandhari. Now, the point I'm making is, here is a composition goes back, of the fifth Guru, and it goes back centuries. But the only space, this is the first form in which there's a one full form of raga, just a single note, a touch of a second raga is used, fleetingly, just to cause a shocker, just to render the heart, if I may, right? It's a very moving spot. It goes like this. All major scale so far. The sixth flat comes here. Comes to the second sharp. The fourth, fifth, sixth, and second sal. Then the stanza comes. Look at this. Play the chord of da. Da, the sweet. The stanza goes. Akhand Deep So see, the second flat comes there. Just one spot in the whole entire composition by the Guru. Now this is the first form. So Duja nahi ri ko re sa. That's your sthai, the refrain. Duja nahi ri ko. Then खंड दीप सब भीतर रवे प्यारे, and it's gone. Just comes for a moment. So this is the first form of bringing in a second scale or another scale. The second form is
I get it.
when you go ascendance of one raga. For example, re ga ma pa da pa ma da ni sa. So sa re sa ga ma da ni sa ni da ma ga ma sa. So sa ni da ma da ga ma. So I just off the cuff, as I said, I've never tried this before. Bhairo, I went a septatonic ascendance, and descendance was quadratonic, 4-tone. Ani, or yeah, ani da ma ga, 5 notes actually. Ani da ma da ga ma sa. So ascendance would be re ga ma pa ma da ni da ma da ga ma. This is another form. Third form is. This is all Indian, like this is no change, no inspiration, centuries back. Third form would be half of the raga, like from first note to the fifth, will be one raga. After the fifth would be the other raga. Third blend of the raga. So point I'm making is, anybody who says that Indian classical music is only one particular kind, right?
Right.
Is I think they need to understand more about Indian music.
You know, I think, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I'm sure most people that are listening to this broadcast know what a master Baldeep is, Bhai Baldeep.
Oh.
Bhai Baldeep is one of the great masters of his music. And he has been teaching people here in the West for a long time. And he's very beloved by his students. And he is truly a rarity in the world in that he has mastered a form through a lifetime of practice. And, you know, I'm aware when I'm talking to you that I'm talking to an absolute master of music. And so it's very different, though, because you probably can never appreciate how freaked out we feel when we hear the semitones. Okay, it's almost as like if we were introducing you. When I hear you playing the semitones, to me that's like if there's a room of people, men and women, and then there's another person who's not a man or a woman, something new. Some new creature. So it's very very beautiful, and you can realize some of the limitations we have in Western instruments is that we can't do that. But that's one thing. But I think what you're describing now, which is the first time I have heard more depth in a discussion about Indian music. I think jazz musicians would be very appreciative of this. And I think jazz musicians would be interested in it because there's been a lot of growth in the modal type of music or the scale-based type of music, but you have developed it to a completely infinite form that we've just touched the surface. But I think I'm following your what you're teaching to a degree, and it's opening up new horizon for me because I was under the impression that you had a raga and you had a scale. So what I'm saying is that the depth of your knowledge of Indian music would be something that jazz musicians, or I mean especially jazz because we love the complexity. I think that we're ready now to hear more about this.
Yes.
Because I think we've been given I mean, fantastic and wonderful musicians. And when I was a kid, we saw Ravi Shankar, and that was a brand new world. It was marvelous. But obviously, it was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
And I think the depth that which you're describing your music, I think Western people would follow that.
Yeah. You see, the point. Yeah. The problem with if I'm saying, I mean, they're all wonderful musicians, but the problem is that the way I see as a pedagogue, that they were musicians. They came to the West for performances. So they introduced to the world their music. Whereas I'm talking about the music itself, not about my music. I'm talking about the heritage, especially Gurbani Sangeet is one of the, forgotten traditions which I had to revive in a way. And it's a reservoir of information which I think will enrich the world of music like never before. Mostly what you hear about Indian classical music, musicians in the West who have gone and published over the years are singing Shudrup ragas, which are pure one raga. But there's seldom you find blend of two, blend of three, blend of four, cut raga. Cut raga is six, cut is six. It's a classical system of singing six ragas together. Very complex one. There's a cut gujari which my granduncles have taught, with Talwandi elders would remember. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done in the field. Yeah.
Well, I hear you, and I think it's very interesting. I think probably the reason why Indian music was presented to us as a one-scale system was maybe just so we could have a little bit of understanding about what was going on.
But so they also perform the same way, They also perform the same way,
I heard Ravi Shankar or other Indian musicians, they would often describe this raga is based on this scale, and then they could play a scale, and then I could hear, the whole, it makes sense, I could understand it a little bit. And so I think that, again, we got a very surface understanding of your tradition.
No doubt about that. I know that, And that's been a problem, basically, I think people have studied musicians. They have not studied the Indian classical system. That introduction, is what I've been trying to make over the years. And people would actually keep some of the rare ragas to themselves. They don't want to expose. They don't want to reveal them. They would somehow think that they're going to lose, I don't know what kind of a thing. I wonder, because traditions don't live when you hide stuff. Hiding and not teaching is killing a tradition. Because intangible heritage can only be taught. Like Dave, you are a pedagogue. Everything that you have understood and felt, you remember, I've been to concerts together, to jazz concerts. We went to the trio, bass and all that, and pianos, 3 pianos playing together in New York when we went together. You secretly recorded that, I remember. It's okay, you don't have to remember that. I remember it.
Okay.
But the point is that your understanding, your whole, the essence that you've gained, you've shared it. And that's the way to keep a music system alive. The moment we shut the doors, shut doors and keep people out, make it exclusive knowledge, we are actually killing a genre.
Right. Now, I think, I know you're going to understand what I'm saying. So I've been teaching jazz piano 7 days a week for my living for 47 years now.
Yeah.
When you're a teacher of a tradition, jazz or any tradition, your tradition, you have to make a decision early on whether you're going to teach, whether you're going to show people everything.
Yes.
I think, and there's a lot of temptation to hold stuff back, but that's the decision as a teacher. If teaching is your life profession, as it is, as mine, and it's yours as well, I know, and also performing, you have to decide early on, am I going to show all the cards, or am I going to hold some back because I don't want people to know something, so I have something that only I know. And I think the great teachers are the ones who make the decision to show it, show it all.
Yes. And that's how traditions lived.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in our tradition, jazz piano is about 120 years old, maybe. So if we say something is old, it was recorded in 1940. Man, that's old. This type of music's been around for decades. Your music has been around for centuries. You know, I mean, it's a whole other thing. But
you know, your single dollar gets you 65 or 70 Indian bucks. But our Indian single century, you know, gets several Americas within that century.
Yeah, sure.
Our idea of century is weird.
Yeah, we can appreciate that. The one, I mean, on the level of rhythm and melody, there's no comparison between these two musics. The level that Western music, I think, has to offer to the East is more harmonic systems. So in jazz, we spend a lot of time, I mean, decades and our whole life, working on different subtleties of chords. And so this is, I think, where jazz has chosen to go deep in its study. So the great masters of jazz piano, I mean, you could play a simple chord, but the great jazz masters figured out to do something like this. See, there are thousands of subtleties of that chord. And how the chords work together. See? So I think we've just skimmed the surface in terms of melody and rhythm. But I think harmony is where we've gone deep.
Right. And there are two things that you just recently said in the last minute. One is 120 years old, you mentioned. Can you show us how, can you take us, on a journey? Can we start the first things that you recall and how did it evolve? Can you give us a quick tour of the 120 years, if you may?
Well,
I'm getting.
Oh, you're kidding. Well, I can show you some things.
No, I'm getting hungry and I'm getting.
Okay. Well,
I'm getting greedy. I'm getting greedy.
Okay. Well, I mean, you want to see a few things?
Yes, please. So let's do a tour of the 120 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the ones that have some of the music that has caught your attention. You know.
Yeah. Well, the earliest is Ragtime. I don't play Ragtime, but let's see. I'm not going to even tempt it. Oh yeah.
Well,
Ragtime is kind of a feeling to it. I'm not a player of this tradition.
Okay.
But what made it was the rhythm.
I see.
Had a beautiful rhythm. Now, one early style of jazz piano is called stride, and that's where you play one note or two notes in the left hand, and then you play a chord in the middle, and you establish a steady rhythm.
Wonderful.
Like this. That's a kind of style from the 20s and 30s.
I see.
That would be considered an old style now, but there are still many modern people that play it really well.
I see.
And then when you get a little bit later in the 40s, you have more in terms of chords in the left hand and more complex voicings. That would be more like a bebop kind of a thing from the 40s. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Miles Davis kind of modal thing, which would be staying on a chord for longer. And then from there, we have a blues styles in there too. So this is called boogie. So this is like a style from like 20s up till now. We have a certain kind of a pattern in the left hand called a boogie pattern.
I see.
It's very bluesy, kind of funky, and we usually play around with the blues scale. This is kind of a boogie style. A lot of people like that. And then you have free jazz, which was like 50s and later. Free jazz can be anything. There's no set key centers or anything. So all of those are just some of the different styles.
That's fantastic. So anyway, what you gonna play for us next? So we've had a long conversation. Let's have some music now.
Okay. I'm going to play. Let's see now. Let's see if I can get through this ballad. I'm going to play something different. I haven't played this in a while.
Wow. Fantastic.
That's like a ballad style.
I see. Fantastic. What a movement. Such subtlety, it's so velvet, such velvetish in a way. Very silken.
What was the word?
Very silken, like velvet. Very
velvet.
Soft.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
And
like
what was it? What do you call it? I mean, what is it called?
That would be like a ballad.
I see.
Ballad. Slow. It's not about the improvising of the lines. It's more about creating a mood, more about conveying a melody, like that. That's a different style of playing.
There is somebody called Bonnie Keys. He says, Dave, sir, he wants to listen to some tritone substitution licks.
Okay, so tritone substitution. If you have a chord progression, I'm sure the listener understands this, that you have a typical jazz progression, which would be 2 minor 7, 5 7, 1 major 7. So this is very common in Western music. This will be a progression like. This is a typical jazz harmony. You have a 2 minor 7, 5 7, and a 1 major 7. When you use a tritone substitution, you're using a different chord instead of the 5 7. You're using a flat 2 7 instead of a D minor 7, G 7, C major 7. You're going D minor 7, D flat 7. It has a more tense kind of a sound, and it resolves to the C. So the difference again might be the D minor 7 to G 7, normal kind of sound, and now resolving to 1. The other one is D minor 7, D flat 7. It's like going a different route on the subway, but you end up at the same place. So if you wanted to hear some licks, so this would be more like kind of basic, what we call in jazz 2-5-1 kind of improvising. Now, if I use a tritone substitution, it would sound different like this. 2 minor. That would be the tritone substitution. In terms of the harmony, it would be like this. And it would be this.
Fantastic.
It has a whole different degree of tension.
It's fantastic.
Ask if there's anything else you want.
So, no. Now I want to come to, of course, we'll listen to things that you would play for us so very kindly. About the pedagogy, the practice of the scales. How do you work on, for example, how do you practice the hand on the keys? I mean, it's how many? Piano has what, 4.5? How many octaves? Sometimes it can go many more
88,
than that.
88 keys.
88 keys, isn't it? Can you
can
show us how do you practice do you work on the basics as well, or are you just playing? How does a senior like you, a maestro like you, do you get to escape the hard work, or you still have to run the miles?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about this. The teacher that I studied with, name was Lenny Tristano. He was one of the major figures in jazz piano history. He lived from the 1920s and died in 1978. He lived born in 1919, died in 1978. And he was one of the first people to develop a methodology for teaching jazz piano. And we used to go see him. I was incredibly fortunate to have met him at the age of 15. And so this was my master when I was growing up. I was studying with him for 7 years every week, and he was one of the great jazz pianists of all time, and one of the first people to learn how to teach it. So he had us doing, as pianists, scales with only 2 fingers at a time.
I see. So
you would do a scale. I'm not sure. I don't think you can see the piano, but you would do a scale.
No, I can. Yeah.
Can you?
Okay.
So
yeah.
I'll do it here. So you would do a scale just using the first and second finger with the metronome like this. Just 1, 2 fingers. And then backwards. And okay, then he would change it and do 4, 5 fingering only.
I see.
It gets a little traffic jam, then it opens up. And then he would do 1, 2, 3 fingering. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and he had 5 years worth of this torture.
Why don't you play some? Why don't you play? Why don't give small illustrations? Show us a few patterns, like full patterns. Would
You
be
mean
fantastic.
like scale?
Yeah, the ones that the way he was teaching, the way you were practicing those
Okay.
5 years. Give us a journey of those 5 years.
All right. So it would start off by just doing one hand with like a 4/5 fingering. And I believe that he was trying to promote the independence of the fingers and the control and the awareness of how every finger interacted with the notes. And then you would do the same thing in the left hand going backwards. I'm only using the 4th and 5th finger of the left hand.
Right.
Now, then he would have us doing contrary motion, up in one hand, down in the other, still using 2 fingers. We used to concentrate on 3 different scales: the major scale, the melodic minor scale, which is this, major scale with a flatted third only. The same thing, 2 fingers, but a different scale. And there were basically 3 that we worked on: the major, the melodic minor, and the harmonic minor. And the harmonic minor would sound like this. And we would take that through all the hand in different positions. One of the fingerings was actually 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And you had to keep that in your mind: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, as you were going contrary motion with a different scale. That was about year 1. And in year 2, he started to change the timing. So he taught what we call 2 versus 1, which would be like this. Just using 2 fingers. This would be 2 in the right hand, quarter notes, left hand half notes. Then we go through all the different scales with all the different parts of the hand separately. And then it went to 3 versus 1. Let's see, we could do it this way. There's various ways you can do it. Right? Just using 2 fingers. And you listen to the metronome, so you try to stay on beat as best as you can. So we're going 3 octaves in the right hand and 1 octave in the left hand. So on. And then the next year, he started getting into complex timings. The only one I can demonstrate for you now, which I remember, is 3 versus 2. So you actually had to do 2 fingers of a scale, contrary motion, and the right hand is doing a 2 rhythm and the left hand is doing a 3 rhythm. And then it went from there into 3 against 5, 4 against 5, and then it became almost like calculus.
I see. This is fantastic.
Now, I don't necessarily recommend that approach.
Why?
Well, it was very tedious.
Are you still carrying a trauma?
What?
Are you still carrying a trauma?
Probably. It wasn't. It's not. It wasn't like a strong trauma. It was a long, dull, drawn out trauma. But I mean, it was a very interesting way to approach the piano. I don't do that with my students, but that was the way that I learned from my teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me what I do myself now. I don't play scales anymore, but I am studying with a classical piano teacher right now, and she is working with me on nuances of technique, and I apply them to jazz. So it's very interesting. So, for example,
at your age, you're still learning. I remember you wanted to work on rhythm with me. You're still learning.
Oh man, forget it. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I started studying classical music at the age of 62.
Fantastic.
And love it.
Wow.
And so the classical technique is so interesting because in classical, you're not inventing the notes. So there's no emphasis on the ability to improvise the notes.
Mm-hmm.
But the depth of interpretation of the nuances of playing the sounds you get out of the instrument and ways to control the sounds and relate the sounds, that has developed to a tremendous science. So, for example, if you played all the notes of a chord and played them all the same volume, which most people will do, that's one way. But in classical, they teach you how to bring out some of the notes and bring down some of the other notes. She says, bring out the top and the bottom and hide the ones in the middle. So instead of this, it would be something like this. Wow. So there's a lot more definition of the notes.
Yeah,
so
that's fantastic.
That's how you can. One of the ways you can marry jazz and classical.
Fantastic. Yeah. I know classical training. There's no. I mean, it is so. The pedagogy, the way it evolves, the variety, the dynamic range of classical training is versus folk, or in a way, it's becomes folk.
One of my teachers, when I asked one of my teachers how to develop dynamic range on notes, his name was Charlie Banakas, one of the great jazz teachers of all time. I studied with him for 20 years in Boston. He said I had to play one note with one finger for 8 hours.
Wow.
And he said, play when every time you play it, you put a different sound on it. And he said you have to do this for 8 hours a day. And he said, I'm not going to do that. And he said, you don't understand, you have to do that. And I said, you don't understand, I'm not going to do that.
That's
and
typical,
finally,
Dave.
we agreed on an hour.
You negotiated. My teacher would give me a rosary of 1,080 beads. He'll say, oh, roll it 3-4 times. I said, 3 times? He says, no, 4. And I could never out-negotiate him.
Right. You don't want to ask. You're
the lucky one.
To clarify, because they'll always clarify it up another whole level.
Thankfully, he didn't add them. So, what are you playing next?
I'll just improvise a little bit, and then we'll.
That would be fantastic.
I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I think we're touching on.
Thank you.
I think this is truly a meeting of the minds of Western and East, but at a different level, I think, than some of the ones that we grew up with. Let's put it that way, because you're so deep into your tradition. I think there's much more of an open dialogue and much more mutual understanding that can come about as really totally different traditions, come together.
Yeah.
I think, and I've enjoyed that today because I've learned a lot from what you were talking about.
No, I appreciate that. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you come on to this virtual Baithak series. Thanks to the virus, we are forced to do
Thanks
this.
For the virus?
Thanks to the, yeah, I don't
thanks
want
to
to
the
say
virus.
Viva la virus.
Yes.
I don't
Yes,
want to say
yes.
Viva la virus, but
Yes, thank
thanks to
you.
the virus that we are,
We'll play
we finally took time to connect. But yes,
Yes,
let's
sure.
hear some music now. Let's just play some
All right.
stuff, that you're so beautiful at. Fantastic. This is Japan. Fantastic. That was brilliant. Fantastic, fantastic.
Right. All right.
Are you itching to go or what?
Well, I do have a student soon.
Come on.
You want more?
Can wait. No? Let him wait.
All right, I can do that.
Yeah, pretend to be the arrogant master.
Okay, that should be easy. I'm from New York.
Yeah. But let's have one more before we let you go.
Okay.
What can you play? What would you like to play to conclude the evening? That's fantastic. Dave, one thing I'm missing, one aspect. Although you did touch, I was curious about, are there compositions in jazz which use the entirety of the keyboard? Like you ended, I was about to ask that, but then you ended it, but that was more of a samagam kitan, as we say, the ending pattern, where almost like a ripple effect that you touched the keys that were like the, let's say, the 80th key. But are there compositions as such in jazz? Can you quickly demonstrate one which has the entire range of the keyboard? Are there some, or they mostly remain within the middle octave and the higher octave, like 2 octaves mainly, and then improvisation?
I think in terms of, Errol Garner used to say the piano has 88 keys and you need to play all of them.
I see.
But in terms of compositions, not so much. But in terms of improvisations, that's where you can go. You know,
I see.
You can
the
go.
Compositions are mostly in two octaves, or
the compositions would be their songs.
Yeah.
You know, so they're songs with words. So you have. So it's a song, it's a melody and a chord. So that would stay more or less in this range as a composition. But for improvising, you can go anywhere. So that's where you can move. When you're improvising, you have free reign.
I see. Yesterday we had Kuba Storinsky, who plays a jazz saxophone, who lives in Bali now, in Indonesia, and he had a very big saxophone. Then with a very dear friend of mine, Zhenya Striglev, a Russian saxophonist who's from the Royal Academy, lives in London, and he demonstrated two. Which was a higher pitched saxophone and the lower pitched saxophone, and so I understand that the handicaps, like I have put together. I've set up. I've formed the Anād ensemble, and I worked with instruments from Gurū Nānak's era, so late 15th century, early 16th century. I used the viola da gamba. Then I worked with the recorder flute. We had a wonderful musician, Carolina Pace, who played that. But then when I was writing the music, I realized, because I hadn't really worked with these instruments before, I'd heard them. But when you hear a recording, you think there is one flute which is going all over the place. But then I learned, of course, I worked with recorder and the recorder and the piccolo, two of them, something just happened. I don't know. My earphones died, and then suddenly the everything crashed. The software ended on its own. The live, but later on I'll put the two videos together, and so I'll just continue the conversation, and so that we at least are able to end and say goodbyes formally. So the whole idea that the saxophones, the two of them. I was working with the recorder and the piccolo, the flutes. Again, recorder flute had just one and not even 2 octaves. The piccolo had it's a higher octave. Piano, of course, is a newer instrument. In that era, there was clavichord and the harpsichord, which again had lesser sort of ranges at that, this number of keys that were not as many. I worked with the clavichord with Cheslav Bala Singh, played, and he's a pianist, of course, a classical pianist from the Conservatory of Paris, and lives out of Poznan. He's half Polish, half Sikh. So it's very interesting for me to see the idea of which struck out for me, that the actual composition remains the human range, the voice range, the actual composition, and in the improvisation is where you explore. That I thought was a very important.
In classical composition, you would use the whole range much more.
Yes.
The great classical composers would use the limits of the piano in their compositions. But in jazz, not as much emphasis is on composition. We usually think of compositions as something that we're going to then improvise on.
Right.
So there's more emphasis on the improvisation.
It's just like a foundation.
Yeah.
In the
so I may be missing something here, but in general, the range of the composed piece is going to be limited, but the range of improvisation is not.
Yes. But again, the classical composers, when they are using the entire range of the piano, for example, it is not the range of the human voice. It is the range of the piano.
Right. Oh, for sure.
So it is not really a human body rendered music. It is an instrument rendered music. I mean, you can have instruments, which can have maybe 172 keys. There's no end to it. But that doesn't really mean to the voice, actually. Our range is within 3 octaves, but we only use mostly 2 octaves, because lower octave beyond a point is not audible beyond 50 people. So
and there are pianos. There is a piano called the Bösendorfer. Are you familiar with this? That they have more notes. So the Bösendorfer piano, the regular piano, all over the world, the standard, is going down to A.
I see.
A Bösendorfer, a 9'4" Bösendorfer, which is like the biggest piano in the world, goes all the way down to C.
I see.
But I don't know anybody who's used them. Maybe Oscar Peterson a little bit. But they're sometime soon. But they are there. So that's, I think at a certain point, only dogs can hear it.
Yes.
Like the dogs in the audience would be applauding, and the humans wouldn't be hearing anything.
Wouldn't be hearing it. Thank you, Dave, so very much. I would love to hear one more piece, but I know that you have to go. But if you have a few minutes...
I'm trying to think if there's anything other kind of style that I can show you.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Let me think. Got to be something. Okay. I'll play a little something. This would be more of the ballad style.
I see. I cannot hear you. Just give me a moment. Technological issues today. Just give me a moment. Yeah, so Dave, I think my headphones have, let me see how it works. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, my headphones gone. Anyway, I cannot hear you, so I'll just thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you shortly. I think my headphones have gone. I think they've done their time, and I will. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye. Thank you. Yes. So, dosto, thank you very much for joining today. ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ ਦੱਸਾਂਗਾ ਕੱਲ ਸਾਰਾ ਮਿਖੇਲੇਤੋ ਹੋਣਾ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਦਿਖਾ ਦਿਆਂ this is her poster from yesterday. Something just happened, I don't know, my earphones died and then suddenly everything crashed, you know, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਵੈਨਿਸ ਦੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਔਰ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਕੱਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਾਇਲਨ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਵੈਨਿਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ 19ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ ਦੇ ਔਰ 20ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਸੋ ਇਟ ਵਿਲ ਬੀ ਐਨ ਐਬਸੋਲੂਟ ਪਲੇਜ਼ਰ ਫॉर ਮੀ ਟੂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ ਦੱਸਾਂਗਾ ਕੱਲ ਸਾਰਾ ਮਿਖੇਲੇਤੋ ਹੋਣਾ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਦਿਖਾ ਦਿਆਂ this is her poster from yesterday. ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਵੈਨਿਸ ਦੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਔਰ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਕੱਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਾਇਲਨ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਵੈਨਿਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ 19ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ ਦੇ ਔਰ 20ਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਤਾਬਦੀ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ so it'll be an absolute pleasure for me to host Sara Mikheleto in a conversation tomorrow and I will hope to see you tomorrow. My apologies for the technical glitches that today happened. Of course, the miscommunication that the poster had 10 o'clock but somehow the earlier conversation was 11 o'clock, which Dave also pointed out. But then I pointed out the poster had 10 o'clock. So I'll see you tomorrow at 4. And we'll be in conversation with a fantastic violinist, a very dear friend of mine. And she'll be joining from Alessandria in north of Italy, just south of Turin, which is the epicenter of coronavirus, epidemic, the pandemic. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining. And until tomorrow, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Sat Kartar, Alvida, Khuda Hafiz, Namaskar, Buonanotte, Italia, and a very good night, India. So, dosto, ये मेरा ਜਿਹੜੀ YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ 12ਵੀਂ ਕੜੀ ਹੈ 12ਵਾਂ ਮੇਲਾ ਸੀ ਇਹ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਕੁਝ ਤਕਨੀਕੀ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਤੀਜਾ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਪਾਰਟ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਹੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਾਈਨ ਇਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਲੌਗ ਇਨ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹ ਮਕਸਦ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੈਂ 2 ਅੱਖਰ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕਰ ਲਾਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਸਾਰੀ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ 'ਚ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਉਹਦਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਤਰਜਮਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਪਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣ 'ਚ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਸਮਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਦਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਸੱਦਿਆ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਖੜਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰੁਕੋ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਪੂਰੀ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਰ ਲਵਾਂ, ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਾਇਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤਰਜਮਾ ਸਬਟਾਈਟਲਸ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੋਰ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਮਸਲਨ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਜੱਸੀ ਹੋਣਾ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ, ਦਲੇਰ ਮਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੋਣਾ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ, ਸਰਦੂਲ ਸਿਕੰਦਰ ਹੋਣਾ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ, ਮਦਨ ਗੋਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ, ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵਾਰਤਾਵਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਜਾਂ ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਟਾਈਟਲ ਵੀ ਦੇਣੇ ਪੈਣੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਪੋਸਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਉਹਦੀ। ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਟੈਕਨੀਕਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਰਿਵਿਊ ਜਿਹਾ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ 'ਚ ਬੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਮਤਲਬ ਮੈਂ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਸੰਗੀਤਕਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝ ਸਕਦਾ, ਮੈਂ ਉਹ ਲਿਆਵਾਂਗੇ ਵੀ ਬੈਠਕ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ 'ਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਸੁਣਾਂਗੇ। ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਜੋ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਆਪਣੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ 'ਚ ਦੱਸਣ, ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨੋਟ ਕਰ ਲਾਂਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਸਮਝ ਲਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ 2-3 ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕਰ ਲਵਾਂ। ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹਨਗੇ ਜੈਜ਼ ਦੇ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੰਨਗੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਾਬੀਅਤ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇੰਤਹਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਜੈਜ਼ ਪਿਆਨਿਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਹਨਗੇ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਮਸ਼ਰੂਫ ਹਨਗੇ ਉਸ ਫਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਦੀ ਤਾਲੀਮ, ਜੈਜ਼ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਦੀ ਤਾਲੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਚੰਦ ਜਣੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਉਸ ਪਾਏ ਦੇ, ਅਵਲ ਪਾਏ ਦੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਹਨਗੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਬੈਸਟ ਸੈਲਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਹੈ ਹਾਲ ਲਿਓਨਾਰਡ ਬੁੱਕ ਐਂਡ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜॉय ਆਫ ਇੰਪਰੋਵਾਈਜ਼ੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਂ जॉय ਆਫ ਇੰਪਰੋਵ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਸਲੈਂਗ ਇੰਪਰੋਵਾਈਜ਼ੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਅੱਖਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 2020 ਕਰਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ 50 ਹੋਰ ਤੋਂ। ਸੋ जॉय ਆਫ ਇੰਪਰੋਵ ਐਂਡ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਥਰੂ ਟੂ ਇੰਪਰੋਵ ਕਰਕੇ 2 ਕਿਤਾਬਾਂ ਹਨਗੀਆਂ। ਇਹ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਸਨ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਦੇ ਬਰਕਲੀ ਕਾਲਜ ਆਫ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ ਇਨ ਬੋਸਟਨ। 1987 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 2005 ਤੱਕ 18 ਸਾਲ ਉੱਥੇ ਇਹ ਸੇਵਾ ਨਸ਼ੀ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕੋ-ਫਾਊਂਡ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਜੈਜ਼ 1983 ਤੋਂ 86 ਤੱਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚਲਾਇਆ ਸੀ। 87 'ਚ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਬਰਕਲੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ ਬੋਸਟਨ ਚਲੇ ਗਏ ਸਨ। ਡੇਵ 2006 'ਚ ਵਾਪਸ ਫਿਰ ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ ਆ ਗਏ। ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਜੈਜ਼ ਮਿਡਟਾਊਨ ਮੈਨਹੈਟਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ, ਤੇ DFS of J ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਜੈਜ਼, DFS of J ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਕਲਾਸਾਂ ਲਾਉਂਦਾ, ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਇੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਆਪ ਡੇਵ ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ ਲੱਗੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹੁਣੇ ਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਦੱਖਣੀ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੇ ਹੀ ਟਾਪੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਸਪਾਇਰ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਉਹ ਹੁਣੇ ਸਿੱਖਣਾ ਉਹਨੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਹਰ ਲੈਵਲ ਦੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਉਸਤਾਦਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾਉਣਾ, ਔਰ ਇਹ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟਲੀ ਵੀ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਗੂਗਲ ਪਲੱਸ ਲੈਸਨਸ ਵੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਕਾਈਪ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਮਾਧਿਅਮ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡੇਵ ਹੁਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਾਣੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਐਕਸਟੈਂਸਿਵ ਲਾਇਬ੍ਰੇਰੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਲਾਇਬ੍ਰੇਰੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਕਲਾਸਿਸ ਔਰ ਪਰਫਾਰਮੈਂਸਿਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨੇ YouTube ਤੇ Ustream ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਾਈ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। 2014 ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲੇਖ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਸੀ ਇਹ, ਤੇ 53 ਇਨਡੈਪਥ ਕਲਾਸਿਸ ਸਨ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਸਬਜੈਕਟਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਵਿਊਇੰਗ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਅਵੇਲੇਬਲ ਸੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਵੀ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਬਜੈਕਟ ਸਨ ਕਿ ਚਿਕ ਕੋਰੀਆ, ਬਿਲ ਐਵਨਸ, ऑस्कर पीटरसन, वॉकिंग बेसलाइन क्लिनिक, और फिर प्लेइंग आउटसाइड द चेंजेस, द ग्रेटफुल डेड, फ्रैंक ज़ैप्पा, चार्ली पाकर ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਬੜੇ ਵਿਦਵਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ YouTube ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚੋਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਲੇਸ਼ਣ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਨ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਡੀ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਜੈਜ਼ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ YouTube ਚੈਨਲ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਲਾਹਾ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਅਨੇਕ ਕੋਨਿਆਂ 'ਤੇ ਤਮਾਮ ਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੈਜ਼ ਫੈਸਟੀਵਲਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਵਜਾ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। कई इन्हां दे उत्ते लेख लिखे गए ने डाउनबीट मैगजीन च, बॉस्टन ग्लोब विच, कीबोर्ड मैगजीन च, क्रॉनिकल ऑफ हायर लर्निंग, ये बहुत ही यानी कि अहम ये संगीतज्ञ हनगे, ये उस्ताद लोग हनगे इस फन दे। और तुहानूं इन्हां दी हलीमी और इन्हां दी जिहड़ी चिंतक जिहड़ा मैं कई विद्वानां च देखिया जे जिवें दलेर होनी ने या जस्सी होनी ने, अज भी उन्होंने चाह हुंदा कोई नवीं चीज़ मिल जाए, कोई पुरानी चीज़ मिल जाए ते ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਦਾ, ਸਮਝਣ ਦਾ, ਸੁਣਨ ਦਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਘੋਖਣ ਦਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਨਾਪਣ ਤੋਲਣ ਦਾ ਚਾਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਦੇਖਦਾ। ਔਰ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਇੰਨਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਮੈਂ ਹੈਰਾਨ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ, ਕੋਈ ਕਈ ਵਰੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਲੰਬੀ ਗੱਪਸ਼ਪ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਕੁਝ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਿਆਨਿਸਟ ਹੈ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਜਾਉਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਦਾ ਸਬਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇੰਨਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਜੈਜ਼ ਸੰਗੀਤਕਾਰ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਜਿਹਦੇ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਰਿਮਾਰਕ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਲੋਕ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਤੋਂ ਟੁੱਟ ਕੇ ਬੜਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ, ਤੇ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਤੋਂ ਟੁੱਟ ਕੇ ਬੜਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਅਟੁੱਟ, ਇੱਕ ਤਾਣੇ ਪੇਟੇ ਵਾਲਾ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਇੱਕੋ ਫੁਲਕਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਦੋ ਤਣੇ ਹਨਗੇ, ਦੋ ਧਾਗੇ ਹਨਗੇ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਈ ਔਰ ਹੈਰਾਨੀ ਵੀ ਹੋਈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਉਮਰ 'ਚ ਆ ਕੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ। ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਆਮ ਜੈਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੱਕੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਰਸਵ ਦੀਰਘ ਪੁਲਿਤ ਦੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ, ਰਸਵ ਬਹੁਤ ਰਸੀਲਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਔਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮੱਧਮ ਹੋਵੇ, ਦੀਰਘ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸੱਟ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪ੍ਰੋਫਾਊਂਡ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪੁਲਿਤ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜੈਂਟਲ ਹੋਵੇ, ਸੌਫਟ ਹੋਵੇ। ਇਹ ਰਾਗ ਦੇ ਦੀ ਅਟੈਂਡੈਂਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ। ਇਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਲਏ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਘੂ ਗੁਰੂ ਪੁਲਿਤ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਲਘੂ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਤਰ, ਗੁਰੂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੋ ਮਾਤਰ, ਤੇ ਪੁਲਿਤ ਜੈਂਟਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੌਫਟ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਲਿਪਟਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਕੋਈ ਬੋਲ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਢਿੱਟ ਟਿੱਟ ਟੈਂਕਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਬੋਲ ਵਜਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਆਮ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜੈਜ਼ ਕੌਰਡਸ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਇੱਕੋ ਗਤੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਇੱਕੋ ਅਟੈਕ, ਇੱਕੋ ਵਜਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਪਰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਹੋਣਾ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹਨ, ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੋਡੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੱਸੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਸੱਟ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਪਾਣੀ, ਕੋਈ ਉੱਚੀ ਹੈ ਫਿਰ ਥੱਲੇ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਫੇਰ ਉੱਚੀ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਹੈ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਵਾਦੀਆਂ ਬਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਘਾਟੀਆਂ ਬਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਜਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਘਾਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਚਾਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਨੀਚਾਈਆਂ ਹਨਗੀਆਂ, ਕਿਤੇ ਝਰਨੇ ਵਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿਤੇ ਬਿਰਖ ਲੱਗੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿਤੇ ਕੋਇਲਾਂ ਚਹਿਕ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਆਦਿ। ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਪੂਰੀ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਬਣਾ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਗੱਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਬਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਜੈਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੀ ਸ਼ਰਨ 'ਚ ਜਾਣਾ ਪਿਆ। ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਏ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ 90s ਦੇ ਅਖੀਰ ਵਿੱਚ। ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਹੈਰਾਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਬਰਕਲੀ ਸਕੂਲ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ 'ਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਕੀ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਇਹ। ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਲਏ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਕਾਉਣ 'ਚ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਿਲਫੁਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਯੋਗ ਸੀਗਾ, ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੋਚ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਉਹ ਇਹਦਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਔਰ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਤਫਾਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਹੀ ਲਿਆ, ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ 'ਚ ਪ੍ਰਮਾਣ ਹੈਗਾ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰਸੰਨਤਾ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ ਸਕੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਜੈਜ਼ ਦਾ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੌਂਕ ਹੋਵੇ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਦਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੋ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬੜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਜੇ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਲਈ ਜਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਪੁੱਛਣ ਲਈ ਹੋਵੇ, ਐਵੇਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ, ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਨਾ ਦੇਣ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਬੁਰਾ ਨਾ ਮਨਾਓ। ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੋਣ ਪਰਟੀਕੂਲਰ, ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਫਰਮਾਇਸ਼ ਹੋਵੇ ਖਾਸ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਕੁਝ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜੀ ਸਦਕੇ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕਮੈਂਟਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁੱਛ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਉਹ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਤੇ ਹਨਗੇ, ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਨਗੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਕਰ ਦਿਆਂਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਹਨਗੇ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਅਹਿਮ ਸੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਰਚੁਅਲ ਬੈਠਕ ਸੀ। ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰ ਹਾਂ। ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਾਨਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ, ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਕਹਿਣ ਲਈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਈਨ ਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਅੱਖਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਨਗੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਸ ਪਿਆਰ ਨਾਲ, ਇਸ ਇਤਫਾਕ ਨਾਲ, ਇਸ ਕੜੀ ਲੜੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਹੋ ਔਰ ਸ਼ਿਰਕਤ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ, ਔਰ ਵਿਦਵਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਦਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਦਰ ਹੈ ਵਿਦਵਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਲਾਸਾ ਜੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਅਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੰਜਰ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਕੁੱਖ ਸੁੰਨੀ ਪੈ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੁਣ विद्वान नहीं पैदा होणगे, लेकिन जिन्नी तुहाडी कदर है, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਦਰਦਾਨ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੁੱਖੋਂ ਹੀ ਵਿਦਿਆ ਧਾਰਕ, ਵਿਦਿਆ ਦੇ ਕਦਰਦਾਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵਿਦਿਆ ਧਾਰਕ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬੜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਮੰਡਲੀ ਸਹੀ, ਪਰ ਛੋਟੀ ਮੰਡਲੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਿਆਣਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਓਨੀ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਜੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੀ 3.5 ਹੋਣਗੇ ਬਸ ਜੀ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੀ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਤਾਂ 3 ਗੁਰੂ ਸੀ, ਅੱਧਾ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਮੈਂ ਆ। ਸੋ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਇੰਨਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਪੈਮਾਨਾ ਹੈ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖੀ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਧਾ ਹੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਿਹਾ, ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਵਡੇਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਡਿਸੈਸਰਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖ ਕਿਹਾ, ਆਪ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਧਾ ਕਿਹਾ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਰਲਾ ਬੁੱਝਿਆ ਕੋਈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਪਰਸੋਂ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਗਿਣਤੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਭਰਮ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਮੈਂ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ, ਮੈਂ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਮੈਰਿਟੋਕਰੈਟ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਮੈਨੂੰ, ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਤਾਸੀਰ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਮੈਂ, ਉਹਦੀ ਫਰਟੀਲਿਟੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਉਸ ਤਾਬੀਅਤ ਦੀ, ਉਹਦੀ ਸੂਝ-ਬੂਝ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੀ ਦੂਰਅੰਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਅਤੀਤ ਦਾ, ਵਰਤਮਾਨ ਦਾ, ਭਵਿੱਖ ਦਾ ਅਹਿਸਾਸ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਮੈਂ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਜੁੜੇ। ਅਤੇ ਜੇ ਬੋਰ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਤਾਂ ਦੱਸ ਦੇਣਾ, ਮੈਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦਿਆਂਗਾ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਜੇ ਹਲੇ ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਲਈ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਂ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਲੈ ਲਏ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਰ ਲਏ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਹਲੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਨਿਭਾਵਾਂਗਾ। ਪਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਸੰਦ ਨਾ ਆਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਨਾ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਠਾਨੀ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਸੁਣਾਉਣਾ ਹੀ ਸੁਣਾਉਣਾ। ਆਈ'll go live every day। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਨੀਵੇ ਜੋਕਸ ਅਪਾਰਟ, ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਾ ਮਿਖੇਲੇਤੋ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਵਜਾਣਗੇ, ਔਰ ਵਾਇਲਨ 'ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਵੈਨਿਸ ਦੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਵਾਇਲਨ ਸੁਣਾਂਗੇ, ਕੁਝ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਵੰਨਗੀਆਂ ਦੇਖਾਂਗੇ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਐਨਵਾਇਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਨਵੀਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਹਿਰੂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਲੈਨੇਟੋਰੀਅਮ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 2008 ਵਿੱਚ ਗੈਲੀਲੀਓ ਅਤੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਬਣਾਈ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਰੀਖ, ਔਰ ਗੈਲੀਲੀਓ ਦੀ ਸੈਂਟਨਰੀ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਉਹ ਪਲੈਨੇਟੋਰੀਅਮ 'ਚ ਤਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੇ ਪਲੈਨਟਸ ਦਿਖਾਏ ਗਏ, ਚੰਨ ਅਤੇ ਸੂਰਜ। ਉੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਖੜੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਹਨੇ ਵਾਇਲਨ ਵਜਾਈ ਸੀ, ਮੈਂ ਆਰਤੀ ਗਾਵੀ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਬੜਾ ਅਦਭੁਤ ਸਮਾਂ ਸੀ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਲੈਨੇਟੋਰੀਅਮ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ, ਸੈਂਟਰ 'ਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਯੰਤਰ ਬਣਿਆ, ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਲਾਈਟਾਂ ਘੁੰਮਦੀਆਂ, ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਖੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਂ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪਲੈਟਫਾਰਮ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਪਲੈਨੇਟ ਇੱਕਦਮ ਸੈਂਟਰ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਖੜੇ ਸਾਂ, ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆਕਾਸ਼ 'ਚ ਖੜੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ, ਔਰ ਆਕਾਸ਼ ਹੀ ਆਕਾਸ਼ 'ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗਾਏ ਸਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਸਾਰਾ ਮਿਖੇਲੇਤੋ ਨਾਲ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਣ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ, ਪੇੜਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੁਣੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਆਰਟਿਸਟ ਫॉर ਪਲਾਂਟਸ ਕਰਕੇ। ਬੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਾਮਵਰ, ਸਾਲਵਾਤੋਰੇ ਅਕਾਰਦੋ ਵਰਗੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਇਲਨਿਸਟ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਸੰਗੀਤਕਾਰ ਹਨ, ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ। ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਹੋਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਭੇਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਿਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਭੇਜ ਦਿਆਂਗਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ, ਮੈਂ 1-2 ਸ਼ਬਦ ਗਾ ਕੇ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਇਸਤੇਮਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕੇ। ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਜੁੜਿਓ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨ, ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਚ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਆਪਣੇ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦੋਸਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹੋ, ਪਿਆਰ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹੋ, ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹੋ, ਆਪਣੇ ਅਕਾਊਂਟ ਤੋਂ। ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਕੋ ਥਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਬਹਿ ਗਏ, ਤਾਂ ਅਲੱਗ-ਅਲੱਗ ਅਕਾਊਂਟਸ ਤੋਂ ਜੁੜੋ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਲੋਕ ਜੁੜੇ ਨੇ। ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮੈਂਟਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਾਓ, ਆਪਣੀ ਸ਼ਿਰਕਤ ਪਾਓ, ਵਿਚਾਰ ਕਰੋ, ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ ਕਰੋ। ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਮਨ 'ਚ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਚੰਗਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛ ਵੀ ਲਵਾਂਗਾ, ਮਾੜਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੜ ਵੀ ਲਵਾਂਗਾ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਟਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਕੁਝ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾਵਾਂ, ਭਵਿੱਖ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਸਿਰਜਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਤੋਂ ਆਗਿਆ ਲੈਂਦਾ। ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋ। ਮੈਂ ਅਲਵਿਦਾ ਕਹਿਣ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੈਸੇ ਨਟਖਟ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦਾ, ਹੋਇਆ ਕੀ, ਕੁਛ ਦਿਨ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਰਡਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਪੀਜ਼ੇ ਦਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਅਵਨ ਖਰਾਬ। ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਟਵੀਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਉਹ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਜੂਸੀ ਕਰੂਸੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਵਾਇਲਨ ਵਜਾਇਆ ਸੀ, ਪਿਆਨੋ ਵਜਾਇਆ ਸੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੋਸਤ ਹੈ ਉਹ, ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜੈਨੂਇਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਸੀਗੀ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਖਾਣਾ ਆਇਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਸਾਂ, ਅਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ। ਉਹ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਨ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ, ਅਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਪੀਜ਼ਾ ਮੈਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਆਇਆ, ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਲਾਈਵ ਇਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ। So anyway, that was the reason why this technical glitch, but then something, it just earphones had gone, और मैं ignore कर देनी सी कॉल, क्योंकि मैं text कर देता सी नाल एलिਜ਼ਾਬੈਥਾ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਹਲੇ फ़ोन नहीं ले सकता। पर ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਦਿਆਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਇਕੱਲੇ ਬੈਠਿਆਂ ਅਤੇ ਦਰਵਾਜ਼ੇ ਵੀ ਖੋਲ੍ਹਣੇ ਪੈਂਦੇ, ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਆਏ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪਿਆ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਸਨ ਖਾਣੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਮੇਰੇ ਡਿਨਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਸਨ। ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੇਰੇ ਮੈਂ ਪਿਆਰ ਭੇਜ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੱਕ ਗਲਵੱਕੜੀ ਪਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਖੂਬ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਲਈ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਬਦਤਮੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ ਘਾਟਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਬਦਤਮੀਜ਼ੀ ਦਾ ਘਾਟਾ ਨਹੀਂ। ਟਾਵਾਂ ਟਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨੇ ਸਿਆਣੇ, ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੋਲ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਸੁਣੇ ਜਾਣ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਸੁਣੀਆਂ ਜਾਣ। ਮੈਂ ਬਸ ਇਹੀ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਮੈਂ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਮੇਰੀ ਕੋਈ ਸਾਂਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਮੇਰੀ ਔਕਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੋਈ ਹੈਸੀਅਤ ਨਹੀਂ। ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਐਨੋਨਿਮਸ ਜਿਹਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਉਸਰੇਗਾ। ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੰਮ ਲੱਗੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਗੱਡੀ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਚਾਬੀ ਚਲਾਈ ਜਾਓ, ਬੇਸਬਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਨਾ, ਉਹਦਾ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ 8 ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਵਜਨ ਇੱਕ ਉਂਗਲ ਨਾਲ, ਇੱਕ ਚਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਨੋ, 88 ਕੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ, 88 ਸੁਰ, ਇੱਕ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ 8 ਵਜਨ ਦਾ ਰਿਆਜ਼ ਕਰੋ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰ ਦਾ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਬਹਿਸ ਕਰ ਗਿਆ। ਡੇਵ ਫਰੈਂਕ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਲੜ ਪਿਆ ਆਪਣੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਨਾਲ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਇੱਕ ਉਂਗਲ ਨਾਲ, ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰ ਤੇ 8 ਵਜਨ ਦਿਖਾਏਗਾ ਕਰਕੇ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਲੜ ਕੇ, ਲਾੜ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਸੀ, ਮਨਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲਿਆ। ਕਹਿੰਦਾ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਤੇ ਮੰਨ ਗਿਆ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਕਿ ਚਲੋ 1 ਘੰਟਾ ਰਿਆਜ਼ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਸੋ ਪਰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈਰਾਨੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਔਖਿਆਈ 'ਚੋਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ, ਜੋ ਔਖਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ 'ਚੋਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਅੱਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਸਿਖਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਪਰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਲੜਾਂਗਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਿਧੀਆਂ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ ਨਾ, ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਇਲ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਲ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਸਨ, ਉਹ ਐਵੇਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾ। 7 ਸਾਲ 'ਚ 7 ਸੁਰ ਹੀ ਸਿਖਾਏ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਐਵੇਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਕਿ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ 'ਚ ਬੈਠਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਚਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ 8 ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਵਜਨ, 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਰੋਜ਼ ਦਾ ਰਿਆਜ਼ ਕਰ। ਦੇਖ ਲਓ, ਇਹ ਲੋੜ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਦੀ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਆ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਉਹ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਉਹ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਚੱਲ ਤੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਘੰਟਾ ਕਰ ਲਾ, ਕੁਛ ਤਾਂ ਕਰ, 1 ਘੰਟਾ ਕਰ ਲਾ, 2 ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੇ, 8 ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਕਰ ਲਾ। ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਉਹ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੇ ਜੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ 8 ਘੰਟੇ 8 ਵਜਨ ਕੱਢਣੇ ਨੇ ਇੱਕੋ ਚਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਉਂਗਲ ਨਾਲ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਰਾਜ਼ ਸੀ। ਉਹ ਰਾਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪਾ ਸਕੋਗੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ, ਉਹ ਚਖੋਗੇ, ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਥ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗੇਗਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝਦਾ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਵਾਰਤਾ ਸੀ। ਇਹ ਪੈਡਾਗੋਜੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤਾਲੀਮਾਤੀ ਸਿਲਸਿਲੇ ਨਾਲ, ਸੰਥਿਆ ਦੀ ਵਿਧੀ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੀ ਸੀ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਨੁਮਾਇਸ਼ੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਦੁਹਰਾ ਦਿਆਂ, ਅੱਗੇ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟੀਕੋਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟੀਕੋਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਵੇਸ਼ ਕਰਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ, ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਨੂੰ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਨੂੰ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਨੂੰ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦਾ ਪੈਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੀ ਉਮੰਗ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦਾ ਜਨੂਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੰਗੀਤਕ ਬੋਲੇ ਨਾਲ, ਉਚਾਰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਕਿੰਨਾ ਇਸ਼ਕ ਹੈ, ਕਿੰਨੀ ਉਹ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਜ਼ਹਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਸੰਗੀਤਕ ਵਿਧੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਧਨਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਗਾ ਕੇ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਵਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ 'ਚ ਕਾਬਿਲੇ ਗੌਰ ਹੈ ਦੋਸਤੋ। ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਤੋਂ ਆਗਿਆ ਲੈਣਾ। ਕੱਲ 4 ਵਜੇ ਇਟਲੀ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ, 7:30 ਵਜੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ, ਔਰ 10 ਵਜੇ ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ, ਔਰ 7 ਵਜੇ ਵੈਸਟ ਕੋਸਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ, ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਆਦਿ। ਔਰ ਸੈਟਰਡੇ ਤੇ ਸੰਡੇ, ਸ਼ਨੀਚਰਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਦੁਸ਼ੀ ਅਰੁਣਾ ਸਾਈਰਾਮ ਜੀ ਹੋਣਗੇ, ਔਰ ਐਤਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਦਵਾਨ ਸੂਫੀ ਗਾਇਕਾ ਆਬਿਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਵੀਨ ਜੀ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ 5-5 ਵਜੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ 8:30 ਵਜੇ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਤੇ 8 ਵਜੇ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਵੈਸਟ ਕੋਸਟ ਸਿਆਟਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਤਲਬ ਪੂਰੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਸਹਿਜ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਣਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ। ਤੇ ਅਗਲਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅਗਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਨਾਲ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਜਾਵਾਂਗਾ। ਆਗਿਆ ਲੈਣਾ। ਸਤਿ ਕਰਤਾਰ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਖੁਦਾ ਹਾਫਿਜ਼। ਅਲਵਿਦਾ, ਨਮਸਕਾਰ।